Yep. That's a 7-pounder. Come here. Stop. Yes. Yes. That might be a 10-pounder. Look at that. That might be a 10-pounder. That's a power hour fish right there. Should look like a 10-pounder, but
Good evening. Welcome to the Community Hope Podcast, gentlemen. My name is Max, and this is Paul and Mr. Taxman, Mr. Joseph Tax.
Hello.
what's going on?
It should be a pretty interesting episode here. There was something that came up to mind that I wanted to speak on, or I think that we would like to speak on. Well, first and foremost, I guess we must say, you guys can't see Paul because he's coming home from the Delta. So he's not driving, if anybody's wondering. He's just coming home from the Delta. So
Yeah, I'm playing hide and seek.
yeah, hide and seek.
Just ignore the flashing lights and everything else that lights him up every once in a while. He's not moving. He's paying attention to the road.
Yeah, he's paying attention to the road. Don't worry about him.
I'm hands free.
Well, I'll let you kick it off, Mr. Joseph Tax. Topic of tonight, as I had thrown into our group chat, your top 5 baits going into the pre-spawn, spawn, and post-spawn.
Well, top 5, huh? I feel like that's hard, but
If you
I'll
had
do
it,
my best. If I can only have 5, I would have to say a popper. I guess I'm just old school in that sense. I do love a topwater popper bite, and as soon as the water hits that 62-ish mark, it really never leaves for me year round. I tend to fish it more than like a walking bait or a whopper plopper or a buzz bait or any other real topwater. Just because it's I feel like it's a forgotten bait. Not a lot of people throw it, and it's just super effective at getting fish to eat because you're not covering a lot of water. It's a finessey tactic. Then I would say, and I'm sure Pooh is going to reiterate this, but good old bladed jig and some sort of a Zaco trailer. I kind of pair them together as one bait, even though they're technically 2. It's just one of those things that it doesn't matter if it's 40-degree water in the middle of winter, if it's dead hot summer and 80-degree water, it just simply gets bit year round. Open water, grass, laydowns, you name it. It's one of those things that if you can figure out the noise and the action of the retrieve, I feel like it's just a staple of confidence that I can't put down anyway. The other one I feel like is also going to get hit on by all of us a million times, but I don't think anything beats a 5-inch worm. I don't care what any woman says. That's all you need. Good old 5-inch Senko is just hard to beat. There's nothing quite like it. It catches fish year round again, but especially in that pre-spawn, spawn, post-spawn, because I feel like that's the time of the year that everybody who wasn't bass fishing all winter starts up again, and fish tend to get really pressured, and they see a lot of things. And the subtleness of the Yamamoto Senko or really any other stick bait draws in a fish to eat that otherwise wouldn't, because it's heard 20 jackhammers that day or 20 lipless crankbaits or seen 30 top waters and is just too educated to want anything else. And then this is a low-key sneaker. I don't feel like a lot of people, again, fish this enough. I pick it up more now than I think I ever have in the past. And that would be a hula grub. And, a lot of people say you can fish a jig in its place or one in the other, but I truly find that the way that this is shaped and those appendages really slow its fall. So it's a much more natural, lazy, meandering fall to the bottom. And again, spawn, pre-spawn, and post-spawn, those fish are becoming educated, and really only in one of those seasons are they truly aggressive in trying to feed, and that's the pre-spawn. And I feel like if you're not slowing down and being more naturalistic, or natural, I guess is the word I'm looking for, in your presentation, sometimes you can miss the opportunity to catch a lot of fish. So that's why I tend to rely on the Senko and the hula grub a lot, just because of the slow fall, very subtle action to them. And then I would probably say my fifth and final bait that I would not stop touching from pre-spawn until post-spawn would be the good old jerk bait. Definitely something I never had a lot of confidence in. I spent the better part of last year learning how to fish jerk bait, when and where, different sounds, different profiles, and how it all ties in. And, especially when you're talking pre-spawn and aggressively feeding fish, the jerk bait is really hard to beat. And then even again at post-spawn, when they're a little bit lethargic, it's not necessarily something that they're feeding on actively, but you can still get them to swipe. And that's probably what I would aim for. Again, those moving baits, that jerk bait, that popper, and that chatterbait during the pre-spawn more so for me, and then more of the hula grub and the Senko towards spawn and post-spawn. And you'd be surprised how effective a hula grub is as a bed fishing bait. Excuse me.
Absolutely. I'm surprised you didn't throw the glide bait in there.
I fish it year round, and spawn, pre-spawn, post-spawn. I just haven't had the same success that I've had in that transition to summer. So well after late post-spawn, I guess is the word I would call it as, but right before the water gets really hot. That's when I get a lot of interest in the glide bait. And then again, as the water tanks in temperature in the fall, and first flip, like very early pre-spawn again. So there's like 3 windows that I feel like that bait's really effective. But I wouldn't necessarily coin it as something that I would particularly put a lot of time into around the spawning season.
Gotcha. Well, I guess I will go right after you. Give Pool some time here. I would also start, the number one would be a Senko for me. It's really hard to beat a Senko during the early, specifically during the spawn. During the pre-spawn, I personally would stick with a jig. But once it actually goes into the pre-spawn, into the spawn, then it's hard to beat a wacky rig Senko. It really is. A 5-inch wacky rig Senko. I generally try to stay offshore and fish for the pre-spawners or the post-spawners. But there comes a time and point where the majority of the fish are spawning, even though they're in waves. And what I found is when that happens, you could go and just fish a wacky rig Senko around and catch a lot of, fry garters, fish on beds, just blind casting a wacky rig Senko. That's kind of why it's really hard to beat a wacky rig Cinco during the spawn in general. Once it actually starts happening from spawn to post spawn. I'm also with Joseph. I would throw the jerk bait during that time of the year, targeting those offshore brush piles or offshore spots where those fish will pull up to either recover from the post spawn or to recover from the spawn, or sorry, to recover from the spawn or before they go into their spawning grounds. It's a very effective bait to fish that brush pile. So I would take a jerk bait just about 9 out of 10 times during the pre-spawn. Here's where I differ. I personally don't like throwing a chatterbait as much as Joseph and maybe Pool do. I prefer throwing LB500. That's me personally. LB500 is just a lipless crankbait. For me, I've had a lot of success either dragging it on the bottom, ripping it off the bottom. It's more, for me, it's more of a pre-spawn bait than it is of a spawn or an early spawn bait. It's that winter pre-spawn bait for me personally. Third bait, like I said, is a jig. It's really hard for me to beat a football jig. I just have a lot of confidence throwing a football jig. As the water warms up, though, I will start throwing a crawdad style trailer where it kicks more appendages, something that moves more. Currently in the winter, I will stick to a more dead action lure currently. Those are four. And then my fifth, it's really hard to beat a brush hog for me personally. Carolina rig brush hog, California rig brush hog, a light weighted Carolina rig is essentially what the California rig is. A split shot brush hog. That combination where it's kind of like a ball and chain. It's really hard to beat that brush hog style for whatever reason. But that's just personally. I know in our description here we said we want to talk about lures, and the reason why we're going this route. I'm sorry, I should preface this, but the reason why we're going this route is to help the guys not have to buy everything in a tackle store. You know, there's a lot of lures and baits, and there's certain times of the years where those lures and baits work better than certain times of the year. So as we're leading into the spawn here, it really, I think that to do you guys justice, it would be best to talk about baits that would probably work through the entire spawn for you guys. So,
or your entire fishing career. I mean, I don't know if David is on, but we can roast David a little bit as the back-to-back champion of the Wacky Senko. But clearly, you don't need to go out and spend $150 on a glide bait when you can fish a $7 bag of Senkos day in and day out every tournament and still do extremely well.
Yeah, I mean, David Morris fishes a 5-inch, 4-inch, 6-inch Wacky Senko, or a Senko in any form, any way he could rig it, and he fishes that his entire year, just about. Last time I checked, he's always fishing a Senko.
And he won 2 tournaments. He won Eastman doing that, and he won Pedro doing that during the spawn time. You know, Eastman was a little bit more pre-spawn, but Pedro was full spawn.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things you can't beat.
Yeah, I mean, McClure, he caught his fish on a Senko as well. I mean, you guys were both there. Yeah. I spoke to David Morrison. He said he caught his fish on a Senko shallow at McClure. And you guys know how cold it was. It was snowing the day before.
Yep.
So,
yep. I mean,
Senko's hard to beat.
There's still an honorable mention that I didn't bring up, and it's just again a preference for me. And it's not this bait specifically. I haven't spent enough time with it, but deep cranking is another thing that it doesn't really have a direct tie to me for spawns specifically, but from that summer to fall transition all the way until end of spawn, I can't also stop fishing a deep crank. You would be so surprised, even if you're casting a 22-foot diving crankbait into 6 feet of water and just dredging the bottom, how effective that can be. And sometimes I intentionally do that too, because the more that bait erratically jumps around the bottom, the more likely you are to again elicit a predatorial response from bass. So it's another one up there with a jerk bait for me, that those two I tend to always have tied on from pretty much the end of August until May-ish.
Yeah. Mr. Poor.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. If you want to go ahead and give us your top 5 that's not a chatterbait, please.
Yeah. So my top 5 baits. To reiterate again, like you guys said, the Senko, it can't be beat. From pre-spawn to spawn. I mean, all you got to do is throw that thing out there and just let it sit. And you can pick up small ones, you can pick up big ones. It's deadly, and it's a year-round bait. But a Senko number 1 for me, and it kind of depends too, like all these baits that I'm gonna be suggesting from my own personal experience is I fish them a certain way depending where I'm at. Like on the Delta, I fish it one way, and then on lakes, on reservoirs, I fish it a different way. Similar but different. Like the Senko, for instance, I don't wacky rig it on the Delta only because there's a lot of grass. So I fish it Texas weightless, and then on the reservoirs, I like to fish it wacky. But that's just personal preference. And then my number 2 bait would probably be a drop shot, only because if you don't see beds, it's nice to just kind of blind cast that thing out there and let it sit in one spot. And if you fall on a bed, then you're going to be able to tempt that fish to bite. Let me see. Number 3, I'm going to have to say a lipless crankbait. I like throwing that thing in grass or throwing it out of grass. In the deep reservoirs, I like to fish it deep, bump into rocks, bump into wood. Let's see. Number 4 is going to be a square bill. Same thing. I like to rip it out of grass, bump into rocks. And number 5, I'm going to say chatterbait. Of course. Chatterbait, why? You're going to trigger those fish to react with a chatterbait. And sometimes, most of the times, for me, it's going to be a big fish bait. Not that you only catch big fish with it. You do have to weave through the smaller fish. But most of the times, when you do get a bite, it's going to be, your better quality fish, even if it's just a dink. But yeah, those are my top 5. And like I said, I fish them differently from like river fishing, shallow water fishing to your deeper reservoirs, just because deeper reservoirs, I like to fish a little deeper, and then per se on the delta. You're working with shallower waters. So I like to rig things a little bit different, but initially you're still fishing it the same way. It's just either wacky for the Senko, it's either wacky or Texas, and then for the chatterbait, it's either I'm uh, fishing it. My trailer's hooked on one, either sideways or flat. So yeah, just those little nuances for me.
Fair enough. I have a Zach here brings up a good question. Well, not a question, but a statement. I'm pretty sure you guys have seen it. The Kitech spider grub. It's very similar to the hula grub. Is it that much smaller? Yeah. It's, I got you.
Was that the
Sorry, it took me a
one?
second there.
Was that the one that that was that the one Daigo was using at Oroville?
No.
No, he was using
Oh, okay.
their. There's another comment as well that I can take a stab at, Jeremy. But
Yeah.
no, the Kitech Spider Grub, the new one, the redesigned one, is 3.2 inches, I think. So
It,
it's got a good wide body, but it is very much a compact bait. Whereas when you
yeah.
look at something like the Yamamoto 5 inch, they're probably about the same thickness, but the 5 inch is probably a full inch longer than the Kitech Spider Grub. They get bit. There's nothing wrong with them. I fished the first generation of spider grubs forever. Those are one of my favorite river smallmouth baits. Fast moving current because they're really soft. They're really supple. I haven't fished the new one just because the profile is a bit too small for me. I could definitely see it being super effective in freshwater reservoirs like our Oroville, for example, or Folsom, or any of them, because it is a really downsized hula grub. But for me, I don't think that you need to step down quite that small with most of our fish. The 4 inch from Yamamoto is almost too small for me. I'd like 9 times out of 10 fish just the 5 inch, and I'm weird too, because you said you don't like throwing wacky because it's an exposed hook. But I just throw those hula grubs on a 3/16 ounce ball head, and you'd be surprised how well that comes in and around grass with an exposed hook. I mean, Tolok is pretty grassy, and I never have issues casting into the thickest. And even on the Delta, I'll pull out the bright orange ones, and I have a great time there fishing along the inner trough and just on the outside of the trough.
So here's my thought on it. It's the way that the tails or the kickers are on the spider grub. It reminds me a lot of the striking rage menace kickers. So just my opinion, they will work in cold water, of course, but I feel like they'll really excel in that above like 55-degree water temp when it starts getting warmer. Because just for me personally, I don't break out the Strike King Rage crawl style of trailer or style of kickers or crawdad trailers until the water hits 55, 56. It's just because it gives it a lot of action, and it's a very hard action, as in it thumps pretty hard compared to your regular twin tail grub. So that's just my opinion. I could be completely wrong because it is a smaller bait, but I just feel like it would excel more in the warmer water. Just my opinion. I've never thrown it though, so I could be wrong. So
And
yeah.
then there's another comment there from Jeremy. How would you compare a Senko to a heavy bait? Honestly, they're about the same. So for me, everybody on the team here hears me preaching about how much I love the Yamatanuki. And I've done quite a bit of damage with it as the bait is, no other than putting it on a 5-aught or a 4-aught EWG hook. It sinks fast. You pop it. Again, you can kind of get that to be more of a reaction strike than truly an eating it strike. But they're super versatile for different reasons. They skip really well around docks. They're great, as Dominic said, they're a great bed bait. But where it really shines for me is when I put a punch skirt over the Yamatanuki and peg it with a bobber stopper and effectively fish it like a jig. The lightness and the subtle fall to the bottom is a lot more akin to how a bluegill or how a crawdad actually picks up and darts and then falls back down to the bottom. And so that's really where I fish those heavy baits. But again, you're still going to be better off really with a Senko. I mean, there is nothing that we have in the soft plastic world that does half the damage that a Senko does, frankly. Nothing. Maybe a TRD. I think you could probably put a TRD up there.
Yeah, but that's basically a Senko.
It's a Senko that floats and sticks up off the bottom. But
yeah, that's basically a Senko. I mean, maybe a fluke, a soft jerkbait, but even then, I believe a Senko will still outfish a fluke because you could fish a Senko like a fluke as well. You could throw a white because Gary that designed it meant it to be like a soft jerkbait. So you could actually just Texas rig it. It doesn't dart as erratic as a fluke, of course, but it will still jump side to side like a soft jerkbait. So
yeah. I mean, that's why I said I feel like a Senko is probably the best bait, best soft plastic there is, frankly. I don't feel like there's anything better. You can even, I watched it happen. I didn't believe it because I thought it was silly, but a friend of mine really likes to drop shot Senkos and does ridiculous amounts of damage on it.
Does he wacky rig or does
both wacky
both.
and just nose hooked?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very expensive habit, but it really works.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
go ahead, boy.
Oh no, I was just gonna add on to what you guys are saying. The Senko, so if you do swim it or fish it like a fluke, it's super deadly. If they don't take that and then you give it that secondary action where you just let it fall and it shimmies down, I mean, if they're not gonna pick it up while you're swimming it, they're gonna pick it up when you let it sink. So there's that too.
So I was gonna bring up a question. So everybody knows. I mean, there's 100 different brands of Senkos, right? Preferred brand. Let's say a brand that's not the Yamamoto brand. What's your guys' preferred brand besides a Yamamoto? Because everybody throws a Yamamoto because it works. Everybody knows that it's the go-to Senko. It's got the right amount of salt. It's got the right amount of fall, the wiggle. What's an alternative?
I have
for you guys?
Great success with the Yum Dinger.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I don't
Yum Dingers, and then I've done pretty well with the Ochos too, the Strike Teams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would probably say I'm 50 split. I mean, the majority of the time I use Gary Yamamoto, but especially in that finicky post-spawn time frame, I prefer Dinger wacky rigged because it sinks so much slower. It's painfully a bait that requires a painful amount of patience, but
yeah, pretty much a floating worm.
It really, like an inch a second type deal. Like just barely sinks and still has
Yeah.
the shimmying appendages. And there's a time and a place where that really slow fall gets them going.
Gotcha.
I will say though to the audience, the probably the best bang for your buck will probably be the Bass Pro brands. They're essentially, I want to say they're kind of a hybrid between the Dingers and the Yamamotos. It's got that fall, but at the same time, it's pretty. The plastic's pretty tough on those Bass Pro Senkos. So it's a good deal if you go and pick those up. You get a lot.
So the Bass Pro Shop stick bait.
Yep.
Yeah, you can.
Well, that's good to know. I've always just thrown the regular Cinco, the regular Yamamoto Cinco, or if not, then I go to the Ocho, the Striking Ocho, because the Ocho falls much faster compared to a Cinco. So that's why I throw it. If I want to get down and I want to fish those deeper brush piles or deeper areas, I'll throw the Ocho over a Cinco. What you got here? What you got here, Joseph?
That would be Bass Pro Shop. You can see that, there's a secondary bounce. It does, it does drape down a lot like a Yamamoto, but it's a bit stiffer overall, texture-wise. And then when you look at a Yamamoto, side by side, it's pretty close, but this is a lot softer. You can see the secondary action, how much it shakes back and forth. The plastic is less springy. But they're good. I really like... I hate to give this away, and I'm sure Pooh is going to kill me for it, but punching Bass Pro Shop 5-inch Senko is really, really quite pleasurable. And I'll even take the Bass Pro Shop 6-inch and cut it down and punch that as well for the thicker body.
That's no secret. I think a lot of people already know about punching a Cinco.
I feel like if you
I'm pretty
punch
sure.
the Yamamoto Senko, you'd be in for a really, really, really long day of pulling your kayak or boat or whatever into the thickest, nastiest vegetation to try and cut off your 65-pound braid and salvage a $12 tungsten weight.
No, all you have to do is go tight and just keep pulling until that weight flies out of the map.
I don't know.
So it's flying like as fast as a bullet right towards you. That's all you got to do.
I'm trying to send these poor folks out to their death. Stop fishing, pal.
Yeah, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Please don't do that. We're trying to be safe here. Yeah, see. Good old Gary Dobbins, one punching Cincos.
Yeah,
it is indeed a fact.
Code.
Yeah.
It's hard to beat. Even another one that I like punching that not a lot of people talk about again is the TRD.
Hey, keep quiet. Yeah, man, the TRD's wicked, man. I'll add a little bit. Sorry to cut you off, Joseph, but I'll add a little bit to what Joseph is emphasizing with the TRD. When the weight hits the bottom, that thing it'll shimmy a little bit, and then it'll stick up, and man, that always gets them to go, but nothing else does.
So since you guys are talking about punching, you guys might as well give the juice. Do you guys when you guys tie your punch rigs, do you guys butt the punch rigs completely to your Cinco, or do you guys give it some space so that it's able to do its own thing, almost like a Carolina, a short Carolina rig, or do you guys butt it right up against to to the Cinco.
I feel like for most of my baits, I'm always packing that punch weight as close to the bait as I can get it. Just because I punch the nastiest stuff I can find usually. You know, when I'm talking about punching, I call it the jingle jangles, but if I go straight through on my first, set down of that bait on top of the mat, it's usually too thin for me. I usually have to work that bait to get it to fall through. And if it's thinner than that, I don't have as much success. So it's always as close as it can get, so that bait has its best chance of weaseling its way through. Yeah, I definitely agree.
I'm the opposite. I like to have that peg probably about half an inch away from the weight, just so it can have some wiggle room. I feel like once you peg it too close, this is just personal preference. Once you peg it too close, that bait and that weight is hidden up against the eye of the hook. So in essence, it's kind of always at an angle, and I like to keep the bait or the eye of the hook as straight as possible, so not pegged up against the weight. Now, like I said, it's just personal preference.
Good stuff. I don't punch, so that's why I'm asking all these. I don't live anywhere near close to grass, so one of these days when Pool actually finds some fish on the delta, maybe he could take me and go catch them.
And just come and we'll go. There's grass everywhere.
Yeah, I know there's grass everywhere there. Yeah.
Yeah, how was the Delta bite today? It must have been.
Yeah,
oh man, it was tough for most of the day, up until the last 2 hours. I found a little stretch, and there were fish stacked on it, and not a lot of big ones. I mean, I probably the three biggest ones that I got were a little over 18, and the rest were like 13s or 14s. But going back to what we were talking about, they all came off of a Senko because I went through that stretch, one pass with the Senko, got a good amount of hits, went by her again, the second pass, and through reaction, got nothing. Switched to Senko again and got bit. So, I was actually just trying to experiment with, if they were going to find reaction. Obviously, they didn't want the reaction, but it was pretty tough, man. I think it's just a tad bit over 80 inches, but for my best 5, but it was tough for most of the day. I couldn't really find anything, but like I was telling Max earlier, I think right now it's really kind of spot specific where these fish are coming up to kind of scout for spawning areas. So that's our report. Oh,
gotcha.
Sorry, guys. Lost you guys for a minute there.
But what's your fault? You knew this was happening, and you chose to go fishing instead. Yeah.
You could have came home like an hour earlier. What? This is kind of your fault, boy.
No, yeah. It was like I said, I found that stretch a little too later on the day, and I decided to kind of milk it and then extended my stay.
Sorry, I don't blame you. I thought about going fishing today too. We talked about this earlier. I got home off work early, and I thought about leaving and not doing the podcast and going to the home pond to go see if I could find any fish. So
I wouldn't have blamed you. I went and looked at Tulloch today. I wouldn't say I fished it. I was there for like 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's that time of the year. It's been kicking out big ones. I mean, I heard a 15, a 13, 15s and 13s, 11s, 10s. it's really hard for me not to go fish there right now.
But don't blame you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd
it's
be there
it's
if I
eating
were
me
you
alive.
too.
Yeah, it's eating me alive right now. I don't have enough time to get on the water and actually go fish it, and that's kind of hurting.
Hell no. That
Yes, at Toluk. Go to Toluk, Dom. All those big fish are at Toluk.
Yeah, Tulloch is. I don't think anybody is going to catch another big fish for a little while at Tulloch. Those poor fish are just so confused with this entire year that they've had.
How has the water been up there? Has it been going up and down and going crazy, or?
Yeah, it has, but it's steadily rising. But it does a lot of this.
Mm-hmm.
So
So
it'll
it's like
go up like 6 feet, then it'll drop 3 feet, then it'll go up like 8 feet, then it'll drop 3 feet, then it'll go up like 10 feet, then it'll drop 6 feet. Those poor fish are so like absolutely flabbergasted with what the fuck's going on. I don't think they know where to be in the lake at all.
So it's like the Delta, just on Toluk.
Yeah, and then today there was a proper current in the lake. Like they were pumping
Really?
in so much water that there was actual current through the middle of the lake.
That's interesting.
And
We don't see that much out here besides the Delta, at least not on the lakes. So that's interesting.
no, so those fish are just displaced and confused, and then the water is dirty, super super dirty. So for all of you that are coming out for BAM next month, y'all have fun. That's gonna be that's gonna be rough.
Yeah,
Talk
I'll
about
be there.
Senkos. Every single one of you is gonna have a fairy wand in hand, fishing a wacky Senko, guaranteed.
No, what I probably will be doing is shout out to Joey Sylvia that won Yakabass Orville. I'll probably be mist strolling or hover strolling. So
Watch out for the Jack Daniels.
Who said that?
you guys have your Dom. Yeah. Yeah. It's the Demiki. I think the Demiki bite's gonna be pretty good out there. Obviously, if you could avoid the trout, for the guys that don't know, that lake has an enormous population of stock trout. So not everything you see on live scope is a bass out there. A lot of it's actually trout. Telling you guys
all
this
those
in
smells just go
advance.
trout fishing.
Yeah. So, but well, there's I would say a couple announcements to make here. For the guys that are watching, if you guys aren't aware, we are trying to move to a actual page, and it's called the Community Hole Podcast. So currently, we're doing it off of my profile, and we would like to move away from doing it on my profile. So if you guys don't mind giving it a like and a follow, it would really help us in the future, because this is not my podcast, this is our podcast as a group. So I'm not here to take full credit. Yes, it's an OnlyFans.
I
It's
can
an
show you my
OnlyFans.
feet if that make you feel better, Dominic. I can bust out my boots with the fur.
You know, I'm pretty sure you guys have seen enough feet pictures. I send you guys feet pictures all the time.
Yeah, guys, like and follow, man. It's just
Yeah.
a couple clicks.
Yeah, just a couple clicks. That's first and foremost. We're still having Facebook issues on the page, so until further notice, we'll probably continue to do our live streams here on my profile and try to keep it pretty consistent. But I would say probably the biggest announcement is everybody that's here next week. You should really tune in. We're gonna have Mr. Marvin Goda, our California native No Limit Power Hour tournament director. He's gonna be on. We're gonna start a questions thread for anybody that has any kind of questions. Anybody that wants to know anything about it, share it to whoever that plans to fish the event. He's gonna be on. He's gonna be on to answer questions and anything that you guys want to know about the native event. It's coming up very, very quickly here. So make sure you guys drop. I'll post about it and drop your questions. Do me a favor and just thumbs up the questions that you would like to know. So, or get answered. I'm sorry. Try not to have any dangerous questions, I guess you could say. Don't thumbs up a question that we can't ask Marvin, please. So that's probably going to be it, gentlemen. Kept it nice and sweet this week. Go for it.
Can I reiterate something that you said earlier?
Please do.
So we were talking about, our top baits, right? And I think for the audience, we just want you guys to understand that those are our top 5 baits, and we've already kind of done the legwork for you guys. Well, I guess I can speak for you guys too, but me personally, I've already done the legwork of trying all these baits, all the new baits that came out, all the baits that were hot, then and now. And we're not saying go try the baits that we're suggesting. All we're saying is it works for us, and it'll probably work for you too. But go out there and try some baits, but keep your color selections simple, because that'll drive people nuts, So don't go out there and get every different type of color jigs, every different type of color Senkos. Keep it simple. And that way you don't pull out your hair when you're on the water trying to find out which color they're trying to bite on.
That is one thing we didn't cover. 3 colors. Yep. I'll go first. Green pumpkin, black and blue, and some sort of red or crawl red color or warm red color for me, like a brown. Go ahead, gentlemen. Any colors you guys would like to throw in there?
Let's let the anonymous narc go first.
Go ahead, Flo. That's you. You're the narc.
Yeah, I think for me, it's anything green pumpkin, anything with white, and black and blue. Real simple.
Anything with white as in a white shad, or you're talking about a pearl white?
Like, yeah, anything with white that will mimic a shad. So white and a little red, white and a little green pumpkin. Or just plain white, just straight up white.
Mr. Taxman?
I think I'm weird in this sense. For my soft plastics, I'd say my number one color is just black. No flake, no color, no nothing, just OG black. And then I would probably step from that to the majority of what I fish is green pumpkin. And then after that, it's pink. You're saying a shad color. My shad color is a light pink, morning dawn, something else. But yeah, black, green pumpkin, and pink for me.
Yeah. Yeah, green pumpkin, black and brown. natural colors. You can't go wrong.
Yep.
But all right, gentlemen. It was good talking to you, gentlemen, once again. It was good seeing everybody in the chat. Make sure you guys tune in next week. It's gonna be make sure you guys get your questions answered for the native event. For anybody that's gonna be fishing it, share it to anybody that you know might be fishing it. Get all the questions answered. I'm pretty sure Marvin will also have the captain's meeting as well. But at least this will give you guys a heads up on what you guys need to look forward to. So thanks, guys.
Appreciate it,
Have a good
gents.
night.
Thanks for showing up, all. Take
Thank
it
you.
easy.